My name is Tom Lasser, and I'll be acting as your MC for today's Conversations with Veterans events. Congressman Ted Lieu has organized this special event, which was originally created by author Sebastian Junger several years ago. It's an interesting format that the Congressman has picked up on. And in the tradition of warrior storytelling today, veterans will describe the pride, grief, rage, or quiet appreciation of life that service in the country bestowed upon them. Each veteran will be given up to 5 minutes only, to speak about something they experienced while in the armed forces. This event is solemn and nonpartisan, but it's also fun and inspirational. Listen up. I am proud to say that I was able to serve my country in the United States Army. I'm an Air Force brat. I'm a retired soldier, Vietnam veteran, shot down once, wounded twice, tinkled on my flight suit a couple dozen times as a helicopter pilot. I live in Redondo Beach, and I am currently a commissioner with the Los Angeles County Department of Military and Veterans Affairs. Before we get started, I'd like to explain the format of this event. Today, there are many veterans and many non-veterans in attendance. In order for the event to be successful, my role is to ensure that the event honors the following agreements and expectations. A number of veterans have already indicated to us that they'd like to speak, and they are currently here on the Zoom with us. Later, I'll introduce each by name, branch, occupation, and years of service. This is an opportunity for these veterans to tell their stories with honesty, and they may express their feelings that these memories invoke. Listen. Non-veterans also have an important role as witnesses. Non-veterans will be listeners. Actively listening without judgment or interruption is one of the most powerful and supportive roles a community can offer to returned servicemen and women. There'll be no discussion or question and answer period. This event is recorded and is being streamed live on Facebook. Let's begin with the Pledge of Allegiance and the National Anthem. If you're able to, please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance and remain standing for the National Anthem. Leading the Pledge of Allegiance today is Donald Keller. Donald is a 73-year resident of Brentwood and a community advocate. He served in the Air Force as a finance officer from 1951 to 1954 during the Korean War era. Don and his wife Joyce got married at that time and recently celebrated their 69th anniversary. Don, please lead us in the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Mr. Keller. Singing the National Anthem today is Army Staff Sergeant Cortrail Tucker. Staff Sergeant Tucker is currently an Army recruiter stationed in Los Angeles. He started singing in church as a youngster, was in his high school chorale, and got to perform at the White House. And he was one of the winners of the talent competition TV series Showtime at the Apollo. He sings for the Army on a regular basis, and last year he also sang the national anthem for the Dodgers and LA Kings. I give you Staff Sergeant Tucker.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we held at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rockets crackling, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave
Outstanding, Sergeant Tucker. Please keep your seat. It is my great pleasure to introduce the host of today's event. Just recently in 2020, Congressman Lieu was reelected for a fourth term to the House of Representatives, representing the 33rd Congressional District that I live in. He currently serves as the House Judiciary Committee and the House Foreign Affairs Committee. Representative Lieu was an active duty officer in the United States Air Force between the years of 1995 to 1999, where he was stationed in Guam. He is currently a colonel in the Air Force Reserves as a JAG officer and does his duty at Los Angeles Air Force Base. In Congress, Representative Lieu has established himself as a leader on the environment, cybersecurity, and veterans issue. Welcome, Congressman Ted Lieu.
Thank you, Tom, for your introduction and your service to our nation, and for being the MC for today's event. I really appreciate everything you're doing for veterans. And I want to welcome all the veterans here with us today who are going to be sharing your stories, as well as everybody who is watching. We've done this for several years now, and this is one of my favorite events every year. We get to listen to veterans share their stories, and some of these stories are deeply moving. Some of them are whimsical, some are funny, some show you insights into how the military operates. At the end of the day, I think you're going to see a great diversity of the missions the military does, as well as the character of the veterans you're going to hear from today. And we don't judge these stories. We simply sit here and listen and reflect, and it can be pretty powerful. So hopefully you'll enjoy this event today. I also want to give you a brief update on the West Los Angeles VA, which is the largest VA in the district, in the nation. It's in the middle of my district, but it's the largest VA in the nation. And very pleased that after my law that was signed to revitalize West LA VA, we're now seeing some progress. We have different buildings that have now been renovated and have opened up to house homeless veterans. We also have some temporary bridge housing available on the campus, and all of that is going to continue. And at its full build out, we're going to have over 1,200 to 1,500 units to house homeless veterans, and also deliver medical services to the veterans much more efficiently. At the same time, I've introduced two bills that are going to get additional funding to the West LA VA. We're trying to get them into law. The first is the West LA VA Campus Improvement Act of 2019. And the second is the Ensuring Access to West LA VA Easement Act of 2019. So we're trying to get those signed into law. And then specifically on the buildings, both buildings 205 and 208 started renovations in October of 2020. That is last month. And they're both going to provide 120 units. Building 207 will break ground in December next month, and that's going to be 67 units specifically for veterans who are seniors. And then in terms of other sort of homeless issues, just because the federal government has traditionally only focused on veterans for homelessness, to me doesn't mean that that's the only focus. So I think we need to broaden that, and that's why Senator Feinstein and I have also introduced legislation that will get approximately $4 billion to local cities and counties over 5 years to help all veterans, help all homeless, whether or not they are veterans. Hopefully we can get that signed into law as well. And one more thing, the safe parking program on the West LA VA campus continues, and that's accommodating about 30 veterans every night who want to sleep in their cars. So want to thank my staff, Janet, and my district director, Nico, and all the other staff for their great work on homelessness issues, as well as my chief of staff, Mark Savasco in DC. And for this specific event, we have a lot of people who have helped out. So we have a whole communications team, as well as Ryan and Annie, and want to thank them for helping out as well. So with that, I'm going to turn it back to you, Tom. Actually, one more thing. That was an amazing national anthem. So we should give a great big round of applause through Zoom, but thank you as well for the national anthem. And Tom, let me give it back to you now.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. Today, we have 10 veterans that have signed up to speak to the community. And we're going to begin with Agora Hills Councilman Chris Anstead, who's an Army veteran. and served as an executive officer for an armored cavalry company at Fort Knox, Kentucky, training lieutenants for tank battle from 1988 to 1991 during the Desert Storm era. Councilman Anstead.
Thank you, Tom. Thank you, everyone, for being here today at this great event for veterans. And I want to start out today on a little bit lighter note, talking about actually my college days before I became a lieutenant in the Army. And that's when I attended the United States Military Academy at West Point. And today I wanted to share kind of a story from the Academy with hopes that it might inspire some young people out there to consider applying to the Academy. So the very first day you arrive at West Point is called R Day, or Reception Day. And it's an exciting day. You come in as a civilian everybody comes in with long hair, just like I think basic training for a lot of people that enter the military. It's an exciting day, but it's also a scary day because you want to try to make sure you're doing everything right while you're there. My father and grandmother dropped me off that day, and they went to the parents' orientation. By the end of the day, on our day, you have to march in a parade in front of all your parents. And that day, at the end of that first day, I saw my father cry, probably for the first time in my life. So it is pretty transformational. You go from being a civilian to a military cadet. You're called a plebe your freshman year, and you're sent off. You get your head shaved. You get issued your new uniforms. And I remember walking around. You have these black exercise shorts on and a white t-shirt. You're walking from one station to another in these black shiny dress shoes with black socks. So you look a little funny. So eventually you get a dress gray outfit, which is sort of feels like a priest outfit. It's a one-piece uniform with a zipper up the front and a collar like a priest. And I actually still have mine, even though it doesn't quite fit anymore. I still have it with me. You also have to wear Army issued black glasses, which I know all veterans know that you refer to them as birth control devices or birth control glasses, or that's what we referred to them back then, and not the classiest looking glasses around. And no civilian glasses were allowed. But the most exciting part of that day is when you have to report to the cadet in the red sash. And I distinctly remember to this day reporting to the cadet in the red sash. There's fog coming over the Hudson River. You're in these historic buildings that date back to the 1800s. He tells you about all the esteemed graduates of West Point, talks to you about MacArthur and Grant and Eisenhower and Patton that have gone through this institution. And then he asks you a question. And when you first hear the question, you want to get the correct response, but there's obviously not a correct response. He tells you, new cadet, there are only 4 correct responses. Yes, sir. No, sir. No excuse, sir. Or, sir, I do not understand. He really drills into you that no excuse, sir, is the answer that they want to hear most of the time while you're at West Point, because no excuses will be tolerated at West Point. During your freshman year, as I mentioned, you're called a plebe. There is a little minor hazing going on from the upperclassmen while you're a plebe. Every day you have to read the front page of the New York Times, and you have to memorize topics from the newspaper. An upperclassman can stop you at any time and ask you to expound on the front page story in the newspaper. You also have to stand and announce minutes before dinner. Sir, there are 10 minutes before dinner formation, or sir, there are 5 minutes before dinner formation, and the upperclassmen can ask you for knowledge as you're doing that. But the most nerve-wracking experience is actually when you actually attend dinner, because then you're asked for information while you're eating, and actually plebes, especially during dessert, you have to cut the cake for all the upperclassmen exactly into 8 pieces. And you figure out that the best way to do that is to actually bring a template with you and breadcrumbs on the cake. And then you actually cut or put a line next to where you're going to cut the 8 perfect slices. You even wet the knife and try to make sure that you're going to cut exact 8 pieces. But inevitably, one of the pieces ends up not being perfect, and that piece of cake or pie becomes yours. And immediately an upperclassman would take it and probably destroy it before you could actually eat it. I don't think I ever got to eat dessert during my plebe year. But there is, everything's not all serious at West Point. The Army-Navy week is probably the most fun week and the week that you remember the rest of your life, each of the 4 years. There's pranks played by both Army and Navy during that week. And in the middle of the night, plebes are actually sent on missions. And I remember one mission where a plebe pulled a sailboat from the river up to the middle of the quad where we were rooming. Another year, they stole the Navy goat. And one of the legends has it that MacArthur managed to get a Civil War cannon on the top of his dorm building. But best of all, if Army wins the game, the plebes get to fall out during the Army-Navy, after Army-Navy week, and you no longer have to memorize knowledge the rest of the year. So I hope that I've inspired and not scared any youngsters out there that would be interested in going to the academy. And I want to thank all of the veterans today and on Veterans Day for their service to this country. Thank you very much.
Excellent. Thank you, sir. Thank you for your service, and thank you for your service on the city council. That's a good civic engagement. Our next speaker number 2, is Dave Austin from the United States Marines. And Dave Austin would like to speak to the community. Dave is a Marine veteran who served in the infantry as a scout sniper from 1985 to 2007 during various eras. Mr. Austin.
Hi, everybody. It's good to be on this program, and I'm glad to share my stories. And 2 days into the Marine Corps birthday, just want to say that, put that out there. Anyways, the time and place was Panama in 1989, right during Noriega. Most of you remember that. Reagan had sent us over there. So I was on a mission, and my spotter coming in, we were doing a slow hover on the helicopter, and my spotter broke his ankle rappelling out of the helicopter. So I continued on by myself, which is sometimes that happens, and ended up taking out my target on the mission, and went to the LZ for extract. There was a pre-designated point. This is before communications is what it is now. So you're really dependent on a paper map and a compass and knowing exactly where to be at what time. So I'm waiting there, and I'm in my ghillie suit, and primarily a sniper. We drag everything behind us on a parachute cord. So my sniper rifle is behind me, and I had my 45 up on my chest, just waiting for extract. And the QRF that was sent out after us, it's usually the Panamanian soldiers that they're, the drug lords pay off. So they didn't find me, but there was one guy that I think got lost, and he must have just woke up, and he wandered out into the LZ, and I'm just sitting there like a bush, and I kind of squinted my eyes so he couldn't really see the white of my eyes, because that's the only thing that wasn't green. And he's wandering, and then about 50 yards from me, he finally wanders towards me. And I don't know what to do at this point. I just got my hand on my 45. I don't have enough ammo to take out. If they hear a shot, then the whole QRF is going to come towards my location. So I'm just sitting here trying to figure it out. And he turns and looks, and he just, his eyes locked on my position. And, he turned, and with his AK strapped around his chest, click. He didn't chamber around. So that was my opportunity. I just bum rushed him took my 45, cold cocked him in the forehead, kind of spun him around. It was a wrestling match. I wrestled in high school, so I thanked my wrestling coach when I came back. But it ended up being a wrestling match, and he's here and I'm not. So he actually got me a few times, once on the wrist, just cut with his knife. Somehow he got a knife out, and that's how I took him out, with his own knife. But I'm sitting there bleeding out, and the helicopter, I don't know if you guys remember it. It was a 10-digit grid. You just type into this device, and then you hit send, and then it was predetermined from the cellular era, whatever. So there was no actual communications. I'm sitting there waiting for the helo, and when he comes in, he's just waving me on like this, and I'm like, yeah, just flipped him off. I'm like, hey man, you know, I was white as a ghost, and he came over and he goes, holy crap, and put me on the helicopter and took me away. And that's how I got my instructor duty at Quantico. So that was a nice break, and I met my wife out there, by the way, too. She's from Virginia. But and there's a second story. It was a really quick one. Reagan had activated us. I don't know if you guys remember 1988. It was a year prior, actually, and during the Yellowstone fires. I don't know if you guys remember that. So 5th Marines were activated for that, and we were trained by the park rangers, and we had one LA firefighter for every platoon or squad. And so we were told, hey, listen, don't bring candy back to the tent, because we were out there for 2 months. It was 7 days a week. Probably the hardest job I had in the Marine Corps was a firefighter. And one of the guys decided he wanted to bring a Snickers bar back to the tent, put it in his pack. And 3 o'clock in the morning, a bear rips our tent down and goes digging into Perkins's pack. And we're all in our skivvies, you know, and it's snowing. And at that time, we're all just standing out there watching this bear rip apart Perkins' pack for the candy bar. And the park rangers had to come and trank the bear. It was pretty funny. Yeah. And one other incident, we had to commandeer a U-Haul because the Army was taking us to different locations to fight fires in different states, you know, because it covers like Montana, Idaho, or whatever, the different states. And so we had to commandeer a U-Haul, and I sent Janet a picture. I don't know if it's going to be on the montage at the end, but it was pretty funny. We're right in the middle of in the snow and fire, and this old man with a U-Haul comes rolling up, and we're like, hey, our helicopter didn't pick us up. Can we hitch a ride? And we all piled into the back of the U-Haul, and we took a picture right before we took off. So it's pretty funny. But anyways, those are my 2 stories. Semper Fi.
Thank you, David Austin. Appreciate that. Moving right along, our third speaker is Nicholas Cormier III, United States Air Force, and he would like to speak to the community. Nick is an Air Force veteran who served as an air traffic controller from 1995 to 1998 during the Kosovo War era. Mr. Cormier, you're on.
Hi, everybody. Thank you. I was an air traffic controller stationed at Whiteman Air Force Base in Missouri. I worked in a RAPCON. That's a radar approach control facility. I also held a secret clearance. I worked the night that the stealth bomber launched the first sortie to Kosovo, beginning NATO's second major combat operation. It was surreal. There was no one behind me watching, just one other controller and me on duty that night. I actually didn't realize the magnitude of what I was a part of until I saw it on CNN the next day. Stealth bomber is a striking aircraft that never lands when on a sortie. It has incredible intensity. Upon my arrival at Whiteman, our directive was to take the B-2 bomber from initial operational capability to full operational capability, which means our job was to prepare the aircraft for use in combat, which we did as a chief participant in Operation Noble Anvil. We had about 6 stealth bombers at Whiteman when I got there. They would come from Edwards Air Force Base out here in California every few months. Ended up with about 9 of them while I was in. We'd see them taxi out on Open Skies Treaty Day, which is a treaty we had with Russia where all of our nuclear capable aircraft would taxi out to be photographed by satellite. I was given an incentive flight for winning Airman of the Quarter for the 509th Bomb Wing and for the 509th Operations Support Squadron, and got to see them up close. It was amazing. This meant I got to fly in a T-38 trainer jet. The pilot gave me the aircraft once he realized I could hold my lunch up there. One of the biggest wow moments of my life was doing barrel rolls and aileron rolls in the military operation area. The center stick on that jet is so sensitive. One move to the right or left flips the whole plane around. I tried to do a barrel roll really slowly, and I'll never forget the trainer pilot telling me, don't do that again. Followed by, if I pass out, don't try to land the jet and just eject. I didn't pay very close attention during egress training, and that was another wow moment. Our 509th Bomb Wing is the same bomb wing that dropped both nuclear weapons during World War II. President Clinton visited the base to congratulate us for successfully forcing the withdrawal of Yugoslav armed forces from Kosovo. I also got to hear Gorbachev on one of his speaking tours during my time in. He basically admitted the Cold War was over and seemed to recognize the value of the American approach to the world. What I learned from my time serving is that committing to something bigger than myself with sacrifice and selflessness as a guiding force comes with a price, but pays dividends not only for those the sacrifice is for, but also for me. Thank you, Congressman Lieu. I'm also a veteran that spent a lot of time on the West LA VA campus, and I spent time at the Welcome Center at that campus. And I just wanted to thank Congressman Lieu personally for the help he's given to a lot of the veterans out there experiencing homelessness. And thank you for letting me share my story.
Thank you, Nick. Sacrifice and selflessness. That's a good motto for veterans. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Number 4 on our list, representing the United States Navy, is Alexia Ludingham, and she would like to speak to the community. Alexia is a Navy veteran who served as an engineman from 1990 to 1994 during the Gulf War era. Alexia, you're up.
Hi, I would like to thank Congressman Lieu for giving me this opportunity. I actually joined the Navy because I was running away from home. My father was a Marine, so there was no way I was going to join the Marine Corps. I joined the Navy instead. I was really young when I graduated from high school. I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do with my life. So the Navy was the safest bet. I joined right before the first Gulf War in March 1990. I became an engineman because I didn't know what that was at the time. So I said, why not? I remember that my first command was a research and development command off of Point Loma, where we were basically just chasing dummy torpedoes and bringing them back. And then I was transferred to the USS Acadia, ADU 42. It was a destroyer tender. Our mission basically was to support and repair other ships. We were deployed in November of 1993 to Somalia, right off the coast. I was really young and we had no idea what was going on the ground. Some of you might have remembered the movie Black Hawk Down. That's apparently what was going on in the ground, but we didn't know. We could see the fireworks, the firefights from the ship, but there was an entire battle group in front of us. So we're so far back, you can see the fireworks. It's like colorless fireworks, but you couldn't really hear anything. So it was kind of eerie. And we had a lot of really young Marines coming on the ship to go to the ship stores. And I'll never forget the looks on their faces when they were coming on the ship. It was kind of surreal. And we'd sit down and talk to them. And they would tell us that, you know, there were kids shooting at them and there was nothing they can do. They couldn't shoot back. And there's really nothing you can say at that point. There's no way you can make it better. All you can do is listen and try to be supportive. But I will never forget those months sitting off the shore of Somalia. I'll never forget every Marine I ever met. I'll never forget the looks on their faces. Nothing in my life has ever been that hard. I don't think there's anything that will ever be that hard. So I lived the rest of my life thankful that I was given the opportunity to be there, to be sunshine for somebody. And now I work at the West LA VA as the Chief of Voluntary Services. And I love my job, I love my veterans, and I love what I do. Thank you so much for giving me the opportunity.
Alexia, thank you for your strength and thank you for your service and all you do at the VA. Thank you very much. Next on our list is Murray Kalis. He would like to speak to the community. Murray is an Army veteran who served in special operations from 1961 to 1963 during the Cuban Missile Crisis. Mr. Kalis, you're up.
Thank you. And thank you to Congressman Lieu for hosting this event and putting it together. After 4 years of reserve officer training in college, I was commissioned as an Army second lieutenant and served on active duty in special ops from 1961 to 63. President Kennedy had directed a buildup of unconventional warfare capabilities. And because I majored in advertising, I was ordered to report to the U.S. Army Special Warfare Center at Fort Bragg, North Carolina, and join the 1st Psychological Warfare Battalions. Now it's 1st PSYOPs. Besides PSYOPs, Special Ops includes Special Forces, that's the Green Berets, Civil Affairs, the Army Rangers, and Special Ops Aviation. My job was graphics section leader, designing leaflets and other PSYOPs materials. During my service, I was also attached to a Green Beret A-team as a PSYOPs advisor. The morning of October 18th, 1962, I got a call to report to the battalion CO. He reminded me I had the highest clearance, top secret crypto, and pulled out a map of Cuba. He said the Russians were building a nuclear missile base there, 90 miles off the coast of Florida, that could reach anywhere in the US faster than we could respond. It was a complete game changer. He put me in charge of setting up the war room for special ops planning to take out the Russian missiles. This was days before the country knew what was going on. Soon, we outgrew the original office and moved into a house on base. We built a topographical map of Cuba the size of a pool table. Our Green Berets came to plan ground operations. I put my teams of artists and writers upstairs to design leaflets to print and drop in Cuba. Generals and bird colonels showed up to direct planning. Then came men in civilian clothes who turned out to be CIA. I worked 3 days and nights straight with no breaks. On October 22nd, the senior officers finally told me to go home and get some sleep. First thing my wife asks is, "What's going on?" And I said, "Nothing." She says, "Then why were you wearing a gun?" You see, our uniforms had a belt with a shiny brass buckle. She knew when we put a pistol belt over it, we turned the brass buckle inside out so it wouldn't get scratched. Smart girl. That night, President Kennedy made a live TV address to the nation. No one knew what it would be about, but it was so unusual the whole country tuned in. He said the Russians were building missile bases in Cuba to provide a nuclear strike capability against the Western Hemisphere. All ships bound for Cuba will be stopped and searched, and if found to contain cargoes of offensive weapons, be turned back. He added that our armed forces were to get ready for anything, and that the president summed up the situation like this. I'm not going to do that Boston accent, but here's the exact quote. "My fellow citizens, let no one doubt that this is a difficult and dangerous effort on which we have set out. No one could foresee precisely what course it will take or what costs or casualties will be incurred. I have no way of knowing how this will work out." That did it. All across America, people were calling their parents and kids and relatives and friends to say goodbye. We were getting ready to be evaporated. I got some sleep, grabbed my strap bag, kissed my wife and new baby, and left not knowing when or if we would ever see each other again. In the war room, we, like the whole country, watched on TV as the Russian flotilla carrying nuclear missiles came toward our Navy ships. One of our planes, a U-2, was shot down. In our big cities, people driving to work saw air defense missiles come out that no one knew were there, come out of the ground, ready to launch. Invasion staging areas at Fort Bragg and in Florida filled up with tanks and artillery and troops. The nuclear strategy then was MAD, mutually assured destruction. The idea was we and the Russians could blow each other up so neither country would start a war. But a blockade is considered an act of war. So if we stop the Russian ships, what then? Do we strike first or do they? We all knew out of our population of 150 million Americans, only 30 million would survive a nuclear exchange. It really could be the end of the world. But then the Russian premier, Nikita Khrushchev, decided Kennedy was not bluffing, and he turned their ships around. You could almost hear the country breathe a sigh of relief. Today, 75 years after Hiroshima and Nagasaki, no nuclear weapons have been used in warfare. Restraint remains the #1 priority for the entire world. Thank you. Thank you for letting me tell my story.
Thank you, Murray. That was good. I remember the Cuban Missile Crisis, and that was a good history lesson. Thank you very much. We're going to take a little break now. Like I said earlier, we're being recorded, and we're streaming live on Facebook. So all of you that are on Facebook, if you served in the armed forces, write in the comment section on Facebook the branch of the military where you served and the era that you served in. For example, you're in the Army, World War II, Navy, Korea, Air Force, Vietnam, Marines, Gulf War, if you get my drift there. So go ahead and do that. And while you're entering that data, I've got something for the speakers. While we wait for the veterans in our Facebook audience to respond, let me ask the panel, and you guys are the panel. Raise your electronic or real hand. How many of you were in the Army? How many in the Navy? How many in the Air Force? How many in the Marines? How many in the Coast Guard? Okay, very good, very good. You guys are paying attention. If you didn't serve in the military, those of you on Facebook again, and you have a father, mother, sister, brother who served, go to that same comment section and write their relationship to you and their branch of the military. For example, my father was in the Army. My sister was in the Navy. And if there was more than one, write in the comment section, but down the line, Air Force, Marines, Coast Guard, if you will. Just like to see how many people are participating, so we can just see how our outreach is compared to the outreach you're giving to us. Now, we'll get back to our stories, and we're going to go to Brandon Childers, who would like to speak to the community. Brandon is a Marine veteran who served as a Huey helicopter crew chief from 2015 to 2019 in Afghanistan, and I flew Hueys my first tour in Vietnam. Mr. Childers, you're on.
Hi, Tom. Thank you. And thank you so much for inviting us to share our stories, Congressman Lieu. Hi, everyone. My name is Brandon, and I worked at the Welcome Center at the Los Angeles VA as a Community Veteran Justice Project case manager. Before that, I was a Huey crew chief in the Marines, and I served in Afghanistan in 2013. My story today is about going to war, trying to find peace, and waffles. I checked into my squadron with about 10 other junior crew chiefs, and we all knew that the unit was going to deploy the following year, and we all really wanted to go. We competed with each other for a chance to go to the war. It may not seem odd to this group, nor did it to me then, but looking back at my younger self, this desire is kind of difficult to understand. We felt like if we didn't go to the war and didn't get to participate in combat, that somehow we wouldn't be real Marines. At one point, I told my aunt that if I didn't deploy, that the last 5 years would feel like a waste, and it really broke her heart to hear that. When I got picked to go, I remember feeling lucky, like I made the cut. We flew halfway around the world. One of the funniest memories I have from the entire time I was in service was when the wheels of our C-17 touched down in the Helmand province. As the engines cut back and we slowed down to a taxi, Captain Denny sat up proud in his jump seat and said, "Well, boys, we're veterans." Still makes me giggle. We were nervous that by the time we got there in 2013, that the fighting would be all over and that we wouldn't get to have any fun, like all those cool stories our instructors told us about. These concerns didn't last long, as there was still plenty of getting shot at to be done. As you folks may recall, the food overseas wasn't the best. It wasn't bad, but it wasn't a treat. That's why we had a waffle machine in the ready room. Any crew that shot a bad guy was greeted with on the flight line with a fresh hot waffle. I ate my first one on December 27th of 2013, and I don't think I'll ever be able to forget it. I was very fortunate to be with a good friend and mentor, Corporal Bailey. He still calls me on that day every year. I ended up being served waffles more than any of my peers, those guys that I competed with to go. I was the lucky one that got all of the action. In 2015, I got out of the military as a Lance Corporal with 0 college credits, might I add. Since then, I have completed a Master's of Science degree in Applied Psychology at the University of Southern California, where I learned the intricate details of psychological conditioning. I now have a much better understanding of what happens inside my brain when I'm out with my family and I smell a waffle. It'll probably never be the same. There are such strong memories and emotions tied to that scent, and it makes it difficult to find peace even at a brunch. Time after trauma is stressful, but by sharing these stories together and learning from each other, it doesn't have to be disabling. We spend 4 years in boot camp, training for 4 years in a unique culture, and then we get 4 days to learn how to write a resume and tie a tie. I know that we can do better to help our vets before they make it to these homeless shelters. It's difficult to share waffle stories, but it's also difficult to keep them bottled up. The connections I share with people like Captain Denny and Corporal Bailey, and now the members of this Zoom call, help to remind me what it was for, even on the hardest of days. Thank you again, Congressman Lieu, for facilitating this opportunity, and thank you all for your continued service to our United States.
Thank you. Thank you for what you do with the VA. And another classic story of somebody using the GI Bill and benefiting that and benefiting themselves. Thank you very much, sir. Next, we have another representative from the Navy, Dr. Theresa Moncayo. I believe I got that right. Would like to speak to the community. She is a Navy veteran who served as a general dentist for the Marines from 2008 to 2016 during Operation Enduring Freedom Era. Ma'am, Doctor, you're on.
Thank you. Thank you, Congressman, and thank you, everyone. It's an honor to be among you today. My name is Theresa Moncayo, and I was in the Navy. My husband and I are Navy veterans, and we actually met when we were serving with the Marines in 29 Palms as part of the 1st Marine Logistics Group. And as we are as civilians, when we were in the Navy, I was a general dentist and he was an oral surgeon. And we were very privileged in that we had so many interactions with our patients. It was a very, very busy base, and there were constantly units deploying and coming back from deployment. So our mission in particular had to do with readiness and just taking care of our Marines and sailors. And for us, it was doing dentistry, doing surgery, routine, emergencies, trauma, and there were just so many stories that came in and out of our clinic and that sat in our chairs, and these men and women were pretty open with us regarding what has happened to them on deployment or even what their background story was. But there was one corporal in particular whom I will never forget. He just came in for a routine appointment, and he just had this enthusiasm about him, and it was a little bit abnormal because normally who wants to come to dental, right? But he just sat down and he said, "Ma'am, I could really tell you guys love what you do." And it kind of took me aback, but I told him we do, we really, really do. And he, again, he had this light and this enthusiasm, and he said, I really want to do kind of what you do one day. I want to take care of patients. And so we kind of were talking about that, and he started to tell me his story about how he became a Marine. And he was describing that before being part of the Marine Corps, he was homeless. And just part of his survival, he one day stole some packaged snacks, and he was caught by this security guard. And this woman who was a passerby kind of saw him getting in trouble, and she just kind of stopped him and was like, "Okay, don't just let him, I'll take care of him, don't worry about it." So he kind of really felt like this woman, this random Samaritan, was just kind of a guardian angel that came out of nowhere. And she could just told him, "Do you want better for yourself? This isn't you. I can feel it." And so he was like, of course I do. So she gave him a meal, let him shower, and she said, you know, I can help change your life. And he just said, whatever this is for my guardian angel, you know, I'm game. And she took him to the nearest Armed Forces recruiting office, and he got the ball rolling and enlisted in the Marine Corps. And he just was telling me the story with such excitement, and it was such a reminder to me, because, you know, when you are kind of focused on your mission, that's what you're focused on, you know, your day to day, just the grind. And it was such a reminder of what a privilege it is to serve. And he kind of was describing all the opportunities within his career in the Marine Corps and even after. And even though he wasn't a lifer, you know, he made it pretty clear that being a Marine was something that he was going to be for life. And to this day, I'm in touch with him and his wife, and he is a successful, hardworking EMT, still with that fervor of service. And it's just those stories that we got to see in our chairs, and those Marines and sailors that we were connected to, that we realized we will always be connected to one another. And I just find so much privilege in that, and so much, it's just those stories I will cherish forever, and these connections that we have with each other as veterans. And we just have so many different kinds of stories, but there's just that connection that we will always have. And I just will always cherish that.
Thank you for your service. One of the unique things about the military, something I appreciated, everybody here today, is those kind of stories, those kind of personal connections that we make, whether they're accidental or on purpose, that go with us for a long time. Thank you very much for your service. And I take it you're still in private practice now?
Yes, sir.
Okay, very good, very good. Thank you. Next, representing the United States Army is Paul Townsend, and he would like to speak to the community. Paul is an Army veteran who served as a communications specialist from 1978 to 1982 in Korea during the Cold War era. Sir, you're on.
Yes, good afternoon. My name is Paul Townsend. First, I would like to thank Congressman Lieu and all the veterans that are here on the station this evening. My story is a kind of a tragic story, but it's an enlightening story. I took a basic training in Fort Gordon, Georgia. From Fort Gordon, Georgia, I went to Korea. There in Korea, I was trained as a communications specialist with a top secret clearance. Charlie Company, 122nd Signal Battalion, was a battalion that demanded communications. We were to hold up communications at all costs coming from the 8th Army in South Korea. We were 10 miles from the DMZ. My job was to test cable, replace cable, keep communications going at all times. Monsoon season hit. Me, my PFC, and the sergeant were laying cable in the field one evening. The road was pretty muddy. We were going up a hill. Another vehicle was coming down, and we had to back into a turnaround. And prior to the sergeant putting the vehicle, the deuce and a half, in reverse, when he started back downhill, he hit the brakes, and the deuce and a half kept sliding. He jumped out on the left side of the vehicle. I jumped out the left on the right-hand side. The PFC that was reeling the cable in on a reeling machine that was not mounted to the bed of the deuce and a half, it slid to the back gate and pinned him and flipped off a cliff. And to this day, I still remember the look in his eye when that deuce and a half flipped off the cliff. From then on, things changed for me in the military. I was no longer assigned to that unit. I was the battalion commanders and the XO's driver. I held several other different positions in the battalion and 2nd Infantry Division. But one thing I wanted to say was the Army has changed my life. The training, the skill, the people I come in contact with on a daily basis here at New Directions have gave me a chance to do better for myself. Experiencing PTSD at a young age, just having these bouts of in and out of, treatment centers and different things per se. At this present time, I am very pleased with New Directions. Congressman Lieu, Janet, and anyone else that's involved with New Directions, I just want to tell you all thank you, and thank the U.S. Army, and thank you, sir, Colonel.
Thank you, Mr. Townsend. The military does great things for a lot of folks. It is a great opportunity. It was a great opportunity for me. Sounds like it worked out for you. And you win the door prize for having the best background. I like all the flags of the services. Where are you at New Directions right now?
Yes, sir, at Building 116 at West LA VA Hospital.
I visited New Direction. That's a great program. But again, the good news is you win the door prize for the best background. The bad news is there's no door prize to give. So moving right along, and representing the Coast Guard is Kimberly Morrow, and she'd like to speak to the community. Kimberly is a Coast Guard veteran who served as a medical technician from 1982 to 1987 during the Cold War era. Kimberly Morrow, you're on.
Yes, hello everyone. Thank you so much to Congressman Lieu, and I'd like to say thank you to all of my veteran brothers and sisters, including spouses and families who served, and also to active duty military who are serving now. Thank you so much for your service. To all of you that are here also, thank you so much for your service. Thank you for this opportunity. I'm glad to be the first Coast Guard veteran, hopefully not the last. But I am well endowed in military service in all branches. To start with my maternal grandfather, my dad, uncles on both sides, my oldest brother, cousins were Vietnam Marines, my youngest brother, Air Force, niece, nephews, and cousins. And thanks to me, my family has now served all 5 branches of the armed forces. And actually, we have a 5th generation that is now serving. But anyway, I actually first was going to join the Air Force like my youngest brother, but on my way moving to Sacramento, California, where he was stationed at Mesa Air Force Base, I met a young lady who had just got out of the Coast Guard basic training. And so she planted that seed, and I thought I would take that route and be different than anyone in my family. So happy to have served. Actually, I was a health service technician because we cross-trained medical and dental there at the Coast Guard Academy in New London, Connecticut. We were stationed right across, Coast Guard Academy is right across from Groton Naval Base. And we got to see the big submarines come and go. And also got my pharmacy specialist training at Fort Sam Houston, Texas, outside of San Antonio, which is the Army base there. So got well endowed again with the Army and learned so much about the Army. One of the great stories I always like to tell and still remember in my basic training as a Coast Guard person, you must know how to swim. Don't let the recruiters tell you anything. You must know how to swim. So the first day of our test, of course, I learned to swim. My youngest brother taught me how to swim when I was 8 years old. And my first paycheck job that summer was at that same swimming pool at the age of 16. So being unbeknownst to either one of us, I was really being prepared to join the Coast Guard. So anyway, I was kicked out of the pool that day because I ended up finishing the exercise in the drill before time was up, and I was enjoying it a little bit too much. And they thought I was taking advantage of it and using it as recreational time. So I was kicked out. So that's one of my great stories that I like to tell. But with that, the training of what you must know how to do, like they train you if you're jumping off a burning ship, or if you having to jump off the ship and swim past a big oil spill. I don't know if Navy does that type of training or not. I don't know if they still do that in the Coast Guard. They probably do. But the more extensive training are the ones that go out and jump down into the ocean and rescue everyone. I'm not that person. That is a very, very special training for those. And I have so much respect for those that do that. They answer the call 24/7 and put their lives on the line to do that, to include chasing down drug smugglers and being shot at. So I have a great deal of respect for those who have and are serving in the Coast Guard for the different duties that they do. So I'm thank you so much for allowing me to share my Coast Guard story. I have so many stories to tell, but I know the time is limited. And I also like to thank Congressman Lieu. I was the one that was in transitional housing there at the West LAVA, and building when it was then 212, which no longer exists, and also building 14 and building 209. And so I was one of the veterans that was able to take advantage of the availability of transitional housing for veterans. So I am so happy to know that they still have a lot of those programs available to veterans who are considered as homeless. So thank you, Congressman Lieu, for doing all that you do for veterans, especially the homeless veterans. Thank you so much again for allowing me to share my story.
Kimberly, a great story. I understand that you used to volunteer at the West LA VA.
Yes, I volunteer at the chaplain's office at West LAVA. And soon as the coronavirus is over and the lockdown shutdown and all of that is over, I will go back to volunteering at the West LA chaplain's office. Yes.
Good. This country can't run without volunteers. Thank you. Thank you very much. And I don't know, but maybe, I don't know if New Directions takes volunteers, but they're an extraordinary program on the West LA VA campus. Probably don't get the news and credit that they do, helping veterans, homeless veterans. But New Directions is a great program. And it sounds like they do take volunteers. So that's something to think of for all of you that are listening here, that if you have some time and want to help veterans, especially at the West LA VA, check in with New Directions, check in with the VA, and check in with Kimberly's, because it sounds like she knows what she's doing. Hey, speaking of the Coast Guard, when the Air Force is on the golf course and the Navy's at happy hour and the Marines do whatever Marines do, our Coast Guard is out there 24/7.
Yes.
And I don't think the Coast Guard gets credit for that dynamic mission that they do. And we don't get too many Coast Guard veterans on very many programs that I'm involved in. So I really appreciate you stepping up and offering your time and your background for all of us on this program. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, we're getting close to the end, and we have another Navy veteran, and his name is Joshua Park. And Joshua Park would like to speak to the community. Joshua is a Navy veteran who served as a cook and occasionally a ship fireman gunner from 2012 to 2020 while stationed off Syria and Yemen. Joshua Park, you're on.
Thank you so much, and thanks to Congressman Ted Lieu for opportunity to share my story, and thank you everyone. It's an honor. So I'm currently a UCLA student, and I'm a veteran from the U.S. Navy, and I served from 2012 to 2020. So I was deployed to 5th Fleet in the Middle East, and my occupation was a culinary specialist and electronics technician. But on the ship, we do everything we can. So I was firefighter, maintenance person, gunner, reloader, cleaner, etc. So I was deployed to Syria in 2013 and Yemen in 2015. And I remember a record-breaking number of bombings of Yemen for 3 straight days. And the biggest event I was ever part of was when we seized a convoy ship from ISIS. So even my army friends are still talking about it, and it took a whole day to unload the seized weapons back then. And I was on the deck as a gunner, and we seized 4,500 AK-47 and 200 RPGs and 20 50 calibers. And I believe that seizure changed the face of the war against ISIS, and I believe we saved a lot of lives in Yemen. And so I got a lot of stories from my good old days, maybe. But one of them changed my attitude towards the rest of my life, and I'd like to share it with you. So speaking of myself first, I'm originally from South Korea, and thanks to all the veterans who serve, and you guys are the reason why I'm here today. And I came to the US at the age of 16, and my parents adopted me with prayers that their son would make this world a better place for others. And I was 21 years old when I joined the Navy, and I was eagerly looking for what I was supposed to do in my life, and I chose the Navy. And while I was serving on the USS Gravely, the world's finest warship, I met Popula on board. So he was my bunk bed mate, and every night before we went to bed, we had so many conversations about work, political issue, life, etc. So Popula, his MOS, which is rate in Navy term, was a firefighter. He was a doctor from Nigeria, and he had recently taken the medical license exam, waiting for the approval from the Navy to become a medical officer. And one day, I decided to ask my shipmates what they would do if they won a lottery, like worth of millions of dollars. And I mostly got answers back with buying big houses and nice cars and luxurious yachts. At night, I asked Popula what he would do if he won a lottery. And he replied with an exhausted voice from a long day of working. He said, "I'll start up a company." And that wasn't the answer I was expecting. And I asked why. "You don't have to work anymore with that much of money." And he answered, and his next words were embedded to my heart. Popula said, "So I can make jobs for those who need jobs. People can work at my company and they can provide food for their family, and they can pay for their kids' school, and they can pay for their medical insurance. I'll start up a company if I had that much of money." And he said it as if it wasn't even worthy to answer. And before I had the conversation with Popula, I did not fully understand what entrepreneurship was. I heard about it in economics class, but it was just a word with meaning of making profit. So since then, I have one goal and one goal only. I will devote my passion and talent to build a company so I can make jobs for those who need jobs. To me, it was a turning point of my life, and thanks for listening.
Hey, thank you. This is 2020. You just must have got out of the Navy a couple of months ago.
Yeah, I got out in June.
June? Well, you're our youngest veteran, and thank you very much for your service and your citizenship. A lot of people don't realize how much UCLA is connected to the West LA VA. And UCLA being in the district, I'm sure Congressman Lieu is very familiar with that also. But as far as the VA is concerned, I just found out that one of our speakers is the Chief of Voluntary Services at the VA, Alexa Lunningham, and she said that they are looking for virtual volunteers. I don't know what that means, but I have her email address. I'll share it with Jana Turner and send it out to everybody, because this volunteer effort that Americans do is kind of like the backbone of our country. I don't know how we could operate without these volunteers, as it turns out. But thank you for your service, and welcome to the United States.
Thank you.
Okay, that wraps up our speakers for all intents and purposes. I have some closing remarks here I'd like to go over before I turn it over to Sergeant Tucker and Congressman Lieu. But today, veterans from all branches of the military had a chance to address their community directly and without intermediaries. You spoke from the heart, and you spoke to all of us. As a guest or speaker, you took part in a community ceremony that returns the experience of service to our country, to our entire community, rather than just leaving it to the people who fought and served. Not only is this Veterans Appreciation event tremendously beneficial to veterans, but it was probably beneficial to you too, and help bring communities and even the entire country together as well, because veterans are the fabric of this country. From the beginning of the country, veterans have left a path, opened doors, and made this country stronger and better, not only because of their service, but because of what they've done after they got out as a civilian, as a veteran. And remember, Veterans Day is coming up. Wednesday, the 11th of November. Probably not going to be that many ceremonies and services like we had before in the past, but if you have an opportunity, participate. To end this event, we're going to bring Staff Sergeant Tucker back again, and he will lift us up and inspire with his rendition of God Bless the USA. Sergeant Tucker, you ready?
Ready as I'll ever be.
Okay, good soldier. Let us, you're on.
Hey, 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 hey. If tomorrow all the things were gone, I worked for all my life and I had to start again with just my children and my wife. I thank my lucky stars to be living here today. Cause the flag still stands for freedom and they can't take that away. And I'm proud to be an American, where at least I know I'm free. And I won't forget the man who died, who gave that right to me. And I gladly stand up next to you and defend her still today. Cause there ain't no doubt I love this land. God bless the USA. Hey, hey, hey. Yeah. From the lakes of Minnesota to the hills of Tennessee, across the plains of Texas, from sea to shining sea, from Detroit down to Houston and New York to LA, where there's pride in every American heart, and it's time we stand and say, and I'm proud to be an American, where at least I know I'm free. And I won't forget the man who died and gave that right to me. And I gladly stand up next to you and defend her still today. Cause there ain't no doubt I love this land. God bless the USA. Hey. And I'm proud to be an American, where at least I know I'm free. And I won't forget the man who died, who gave that right to me. And where I gladly stand up next to you and defend her still today. Cause there ain't no doubt I love this land. God bless the USA.
Outstanding, Sergeant Tucker. Let's give a big shout out to Sergeant Trail Tucker. Thank you very much, soldier.
Thank you. And
Good work.
Thank you.
Good work. And thanks for being here today on your day off. And thanks for singing, because if we didn't have you, Congressman Lieu is going to have to sing that song. So appreciate you being here to help us out. Having said that, I'd like to turn it over to Congressman Lieu for some closing remarks. Congressman? Whoop, I think you're on mute. I think the congressman is still muted. Okay. Okay, well, he's not muted, so we can't hear him.
Well, Colonel Lasser, thank you so very much. This is Janet Turner, Field Supervisor for Congressman Lieu, and the Congressman doesn't realize, but we cannot hear him. And he's been talking away, and I see you're on the hot seat, Colonel Lasser, so I apologize for that. I know our technical team is working on it. We don't quite understand what the problem is either, Congressman Lieu, because it doesn't look like you're muted. And I'm just going to ask Annie and the technical team to make sure that she doesn't have him muted for any reason.
I'm sure the Congressman was thanking everybody for participating. He's done this several years in a row, and due to challenges from COVID, this is the first time it's been done on Zoom. And except for this little glitch here, I think it was highly successful, well attended, a lot of sincere stories. And I want to thank Congressman Lieu for allowing me to MC the event again. And I want to thank the staff for what they were able to put together. And I'd like to point out Janet Turner, who made my job so easy by doing all this work and scripting and putting a lot of this stuff together. And I'm sure the Congressman is going to have a little extra in your next check for all the good work that she did here. And I'll squeeze him for that.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. You're on now.
Yeah, sorry about that. I'm going to say it again. Thank you again so much for Sergeant Tucker for your amazing singing and the time you spent with us. You really uplifted all of us today. And want to thank all the veterans for participating and sharing their stories. Each of the veterans today who shared their stories will be getting a congressional certificate, and it's going to read, "In recognition of sharing your story at the Conversation with Veterans event, and with sincere appreciation for the sacrifices you made to serve and protect our country." So thank you for participating today, and want to also give a shout out to Donald Keller, Korean War veteran and Brentwood community advocate, for his role today, as well as to my staff. We have my Chief of Staff, Mark Savasco, in DC. In LA, we have my District Director, Nico. And then we've got Janet Turner, who is a lead for this event, and our communications team of Ryan and Annie. So thank you for all your great work in putting together this event. And then lastly, Tom, thank you for being once again an exceptional MC and for your service to our country. And at the end of the day, we still remain the greatest country in the world. Thank you all for participating.
Thank you, sir. And great program. And again, your staff did exceptional work, and there was a good collection, cross-section of great Americans telling their stories. Thank you very much.
Stay safe out there.
Adios.